för att jag fick komma hit idag. It's a real pleasure for me to meet members of at least 3 Rotary clubs here in Stockholm. So what started with one American, Paul Harris in Chicago, has grown to, I think you said 1.2 million. My sources told me 1.4 million, but however many it is, a very impressive number of members across 6 continents. And the work that Rotary does here in Sweden and across the globe to build and support programs that serve the community at large in ways going from environmental conservation through all kinds of community services and the rest is something that is really dear to my heart. Before I had the honor and the privilege of serving here as U.S. Ambassador to Sweden, I spent 33 years as a community nonprofit servant leader working to improve the lives of particularly LGBTQI plus immigrant and refugee and Native American communities, and with people experiencing challenges such as HIV, addiction, and homelessness. In all of those areas, we partnered with the business sector, with philanthropic foundations, with civil society, and with government actors to advance and empower these communities and connect them to effective services. With over 500 Rotary clubs across Sweden, I can see that many Swedes share the same passion. These shared values are a key reason that the US and Sweden work so well together. One of my top goals as ambassador is to grow and extend our already robust economic ties. Nearly $30 billion in goods and services flows between our 2 countries each year, which is more than double the trade we had 30 years ago, even after adjusting for inflation. And Sweden is now the 13th biggest foreign direct investor in the United States, with Swedish companies active in every single state and investment trending solidly upward. Quite impressive for a country of 10.5 million people. This economic health and this trade orientation are important for obvious reasons. Of course, they create jobs and opportunities, but it's also important for what we can learn from each other. We cherish the important role that government fills in providing services and programs for our communities, but the private sector can and should fill a larger part of that role too. Businesses increasingly realize that supporting our collective well-being and protecting the most vulnerable in our societies is not just a matter of enhancing consumer reputation. It's a matter of protecting the liberal, capitalist, rules-based ecosystem that underpins their and our prosperity itself. Issues that have traditionally been handled principally by parliaments and presidents, perhaps with some assistance from nonprofits and civil society, are increasingly steered at the corporate and business level. Even the most optimally run government can't have this kind of paradigm-shifting impact on its own. And despite powers to tax and regulate, understandably constrained by voices of our people and by the imperative of incrementalism, the public sector only has a tiny fraction of the resources and human capital of the private sector. A fine example of this is Sweden's green transformation, where the private sector has so impressively evolved from anxiety about change to rapidly scaling up and spreading out new innovations across every business sector, to building consumer demand and support for new technology, to now pestering government to hurry up already and provide the permitting and infrastructure needed to realize their ambitious goals. And with that blueprint of private sector leadership in mind, I really begun to wonder if there is another whole of society approach to be forged, focused on environmental, social, and governance issues, or ESG, to use the most widely used acronym in this area. And In other words, just to clarify, if environmental goals, the E and ESG, can be so effectively carried out with such common purpose by the business sector, can the social and governance parts of the ESG ideal take on equal resonance? Put a different way, can shared values like democracy, human rights, gender equality, freedom of speech, diversity and inclusion become an equally important motivator of our economic actions and of our partnerships and of the partners we choose? Making great products or providing great services is no longer enough. Consumers and investors want to know that those goods and services have been made the right way, a way that is fair to the workers and with the future of the planet in mind. And democracy and human rights have become central questions to businesses as consumers and investors choose where to spend their money based on how socially, ethically, and environmentally responsible a company is. And workers and investors want to see real inclusion that highlights career advancement and retention paths, diverse team decision-making that avoids echo chambers and elevates new ideas, innovation. But I would argue the challenge extends beyond a consumer or a workforce-centered perspective. It also extends beyond risk mitigation perspective, so important to investors in public markets. Freshly reminded in our current situation with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, for instance, of the dangers of sanctions, of withdrawals, and of disruptions to and business write-offs that can result from doing business or relying on supply chains in autocratic nations. It even extends beyond the very real risks of intellectual property theft, export control snags, and threats to sensitive infrastructure that can result from dealing with autocratic state-owned enterprises. The question really is, are we willing to assign the defense of democracy and human rights only to governments and to civil society actors? That's what we've been doing, and it frankly doesn't appear to be enough. True scale can only come about with collective private sector leadership. And many of the companies that have been at the forefront of incorporating sustainability and support for human rights and diversity goals into their corporate cultures and long-term business plans can be found in Sweden, in the US, and in like-minded countries. And that means that the business communities of our countries are well placed to embrace these new responsibilities and shifting aspirations and to maximize the advantages of doing that. Because they're the first movers, they're the pioneers with the confidence and the know-how to create lasting change. A key step in making this goal a reality is the work done by organizations such as Rotary, connecting the business world to the communities they operate in. Organizations such as yours are instrumental in creating a feedback loop that provide business with knowledge about their communities and enable them to assume new roles in promoting values that are not only important for societies but also good for business. Thank you for all you do, not just to serve, but to make these connections and make them prosper. We have many mountains to climb in the span of a few short years. This is a decisive decade. But I hope we can look back at the early 2020s less as a time of historic turmoil and uncertainty brought on by seismic shifts from a pandemic, from geopolitics, Russia's aggression, and other developments, and that this is a time our business communities channeled our solidarity in the face of challenges into unprecedented collaboration to help articulate the business case and the community case for defending our shared values together. And that together, we led our societies into greater prosperity and democratic growth. So that's my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
once more, thank you so much for coming here to addressing us and sharing your thoughts and the knowledge about Sweden, the US, and things that are happening around us in the world. There are geopolitics, there are climate change, there are other issues like cyber and so on. And there's clearly a lot of things on your agenda for the future. And when you just arrived to Sweden on January 20th, then Ukraine happened, and I guess you've been very, very busy with all the security issues in Sweden, Europe, and so on. So we're looking forward to see you more in Sweden in the debate and all the things that you mentioned in your speech. And I want to hand a small memory of that you come here. It's a Rotary diploma. Says a warm thanks to Ambassador Erik Ramanathan for the very interesting presentation about the relationship between US and Sweden. That's about the same thing as you spoke about. So we also put a support to Podio Plus, a small grant to us as thank you for your participation today to end the podium. So, and also the one side it's the Swedish artist Madeleine Pyk that has a picture of Katarina kyrka on Söder, which is very close to our location. So very much. Thank you once more. But it ain't over. There's one more thing.
Mr. Ambassador, we haven't speak anything about food in Sweden. Our members in Rotaryks Skanstull want to give you a book about fika. Fika is so nice, and we have written a book in English, so you can read it. And fika, I will say, it's a kind of democracy.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And behind all of those people-to-people relationships that we talk about, they all start with fika.
Big smile.